art that's really based on a lot of simple shapes that come together to look complex. And uh, I guess that conversation is a good kind of way to just kind of work through the process. Hey, I'm Rob Scales. I'm a multimedia and visual artist, and this is Seeme. Yeah, I mean, I would say that a visual artist is just one branch of just being an artist in general. A lot of times, what I find actually with artists is that usually a lot of just creative people will find themselves in a little bit of everywhere. I know a lot of singers that are visual artists themselves. They draw. Maybe they don't consider themselves artists in the same way. Um, but I think art is really in the intent to create something and communicate something. So I don't think there's necessarily a distinction between a visual artist and an artist in general, but it's a way to classify maybe where you're focusing on in art at the time. I think for me, what I've found, especially now, doing a lot more with like traditional arts and a lot of physical art supplies, the process of making the art, um, just sitting down, playing around with mediums or ideas. Even like I'm personally an artist who thrives in mistakes. Um, I don't I don't usually go into my art with like a clear, exact plan about how I want to execute it. A lot of times, my art is driven by what happens during the process. So some of my favorite things is that something accidentally happens and then it becomes like something new and interesting in the piece. I remember like an example. There's a piece that I always kind of go back to that was it's like a spray paint piece on canvas. And a lot of times I talk about it with people, not because the art itself is necessarily the most impressive in the world, but it looks like an acrylic art painting. And that's actually because the methods that I use were totally controlled by how like kind of garbage my equipment was. I had a spray paint can that just dripped everywhere when you would try to spray it, and I actually used that as um, kind of the basis for the piece. Um, Whereas a lot of times you're spraying directly onto a piece, I was like, oh, I can get a whole different effect by just spraying over it, not even and just letting the can like drip out onto it. So it's just the experimenting, playing around, looking at new things. That's my personal favorite part of the creative process. Because I'm not perfect at all. Great question. That's always like the big like debate I feel like with art. A lot of people think that like art comes from depression and like your lowest moments. And I think probably the best way to kind of answer this is that art is just an expression. It's a continued communication, like an amplification of the things that you can communicate. Something I've talked about a lot recently is um, I consider art the same as speaking, the same as body language, the same as singing, poetry, music. I think those are all art, and art is all communication. And so I think that I've had some really cool art pieces come from some hard times in my life. Sometimes I create things when I'm stressed as kind of a way to deal with it, but I don't think it's necessarily that it creates better art. I think what it is that it creates art that's expressing something that you're experiencing and that other people can relate to. And so when you're creating an art piece when you're sad, it's something that people can relate to when they're sad. Or when you create art when you're anxious, stressed, it's something that people can relate to when they themselves are stressed. And I think um, the art is in people seeing that and feeling understood. And so I think that's what people like about art that's created when people aren't doing well, because I think when you're not doing well, that's a time where you really want to feel understood. Um, and so art that's a reflection of that, I think stands out to people. But I think I make great artwork when I'm happy too, or when I'm having a really good day. Sometimes I've made really good music when I'm having a good day. Sometimes I've made really cool like paintings, drawings. I had a fun time making this piece back here, and it still still turned out good. I didn't have to be super miserable to make it. Maybe the conditions that led me to the time I was making it weren't, but I was doing pretty good. Um, so I think it's just relatability. I think that's what it really comes down to. Happy or sad. Like I said before, I lean a lot into kind of spontaneity in my art. I lean into, I'm not really controlling the art. It's like if something happens, that's part of the piece now. And you never know what it is. It could be, somebody just mentions something and then all of a sudden that's a teardrop drawn on there, or, you know, your one big shape kind of comes through, or just a word stands out in my head, and then all of a sudden that becomes part of the piece. And so I like every piece of art. I think it's just a culmination of a lot of things. It's a culmination of the medium. It's a culmination of the art that's come before it. A culmination of the conversations that I have around it. Maybe music that I'm listening to, and things that happened before. And that why not? I saw other artists a few days before, and I'm like, why don't I just do that? Why don't I do, a bigger piece and kind of work my way? And maybe at some point I'll work on these types of murals too. I guess we'll see where things go. Why not? Or like who's gonna stop you? Like I think that I'm a big proponent of trusting in yourself. I think that we have a lot of influences that come into play in everything that we do, whether it's pressure from society, pressure from your family, pressure from institutions. School says you should think this way, operate this way. Your parents say you should focus on aspects of your studies, or you need to be focused on getting these practical jobs, all of this stuff. And if those answers that society, your family, institutions, all of that that people give you, if those don't feel right, you're probably right. They're like, I think it's the trusting that intuition and trusting that yourself better than anybody else knows you. So right now I'm trying to do a lot more big projects. Basically, I just want to draw and stuff. I want to draw and paint on things. I want to make things. If you got something, for me to draw on, you got some walls at a restaurant, you're working at, you got some clothes that you think could be cool with some new designs on there and stuff like that, hit me up. I'm trying to just expand everything that I do. I just love making things, and I love just kind of leaving a mark, and working on new mediums and stuff. So, yeah, I'm an artist. I draw things. If you see the art that I do and you like the stuff that I do, hit me up.